There is something happening right now that is bigger than the screen you are looking at, bigger than the moment you are sitting in, and bigger than any explanation your mind is trying to form. You did not find this message. This message found you. And if you have ever believed that things happen for a reason, then let what is about to be spoken land somewhere deeper than your ears. Let it reach the part of you that has been waiting, quietly and patiently, for something to finally make sense. You are a chosen one, not because you earned it, not because you have it all together, not because your life looks the way you always imagined it would by now. You are chosen because before you ever took your first breath, before your name was spoken by any human voice, before the world had any opinion about who you were or what you were worth, God looked at you and smiled. That smile did not come with conditions. It did not come with a checklist of your accomplishments or a review of your failures. It came freely, fully, and permanently because you are His, and He has never once regretted choosing you. There are people in this world who will spend their entire lives trying to feel that kind of acceptance. They will chase it in relationships, in achievements, in titles, in numbers on a screen, in the approval of people who are themselves still searching. But you, chosen one, you are being stopped in this moment because heaven has something to say to you that no achievement could ever say, and no person could ever fully give. You are loved, you are seen, you are chosen, and God smiles every single time He looks at you. You may be watching this in the quiet of a room where no one knows the battles you have been fighting. You may be listening in a car, parked somewhere between where you were and where you are trying to go, holding together pieces of a life that sometimes feel too heavy for one person to carry. You may be lying in bed, eyes wide open in the dark, wondering if anyone truly sees how hard you are trying. Heaven sees, and not with the kind of seeing that notices only the surface. Heaven sees the depth of you, the courage in you, the faith that is still burning even when the flame feels small. Heaven sees you, and heaven is saying tonight, you are not forgotten. You are not invisible. You are exactly where you are supposed to be. This is not coincidence. This is not the algorithm. This is divine positioning. Of the billions of people scrolling through content at this very moment, you paused here. Something in you recognized something in this message before your mind could fully explain why. That recognition is not random. It is the sound of heaven calling a name, and that name belongs to you. When God calls a chosen one, He does not send a generic message to a crowd. He speaks directly, personally, and specifically. He knows your name. He knows your story. He knows every chapter you have lived through and every chapter that is still waiting to be written. And He is not holding your past chapters against you. He is using every single one of them to build something in you that the world has never seen before. You were never meant to blend in. From the very beginning, there was something in you that was different, something that could not quite settle for ordinary, something that kept rising even when everything around you was pushing down. That restlessness you have felt is not a flaw. It is a frequency. It is the signature of someone who was made for more, someone who carries a calling that is too large to be contained by average thinking and too powerful to be silenced by any opposition this world can throw. You have been different your whole life, and what you once saw as a wound is actually a mark, the mark of the chosen. Think about the moments in your life when you should have given up but did not. Think about the nights that felt impossible and the mornings that somehow still came. Think about the times you were pushed to the edge of what you thought you could handle, and yet here you are, still standing, still breathing, still reaching. That is not luck. That is not your own strength alone. That is the hand of a God who placed His call on your life and made a promise to bring it to completion. Philippians chapter 1, verse 6 says, "He who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus." That verse was written for this moment. That promise is alive inside your story right now. You carry a light that the darkness cannot extinguish. You carry a purpose that no delay can permanently derail. You carry a future that has already been secured by the one who holds all of time in his hands. And the reason this message is reaching you today is because it is time. It is time for you to stop living as though you are on the outside of something, as though the calling on your life belongs to someone more qualified, someone more polished, someone who has made fewer mistakes. God does not call the perfect, He calls the willing. And your willingness, even your imperfect and trembling willingness, is enough. So right now, in this moment, if something in your chest is stirring, if something feels like it is waking up after a long sleep, if there is a warmth rising in you that you cannot fully explain, do not dismiss it. That is the breath of heaven moving through your life again. That is the God who smiles at you every time He looks at you, reminding you that His smile has never stopped. It has been there through the valleys. It has been there through the silence. It has been there through every single season you thought He had forgotten you in. If you feel this in your spirit right now, type the number 77 in the comments. Let it be your declaration that you receive this word, that you acknowledge the calling on your life, and that you are ready to walk forward in the truth of who you are. 77, just 2 numbers, but let them be the sound of a chosen one saying yes to heaven tonight. You are not at the end of something. You are at the beginning. And the God who chose you before the foundation of the world is smiling at you right now, proud of every step you have taken, faithful in every promise He has made, and completely certain that what He started in you is going to be finished in glory. There is a kind of loneliness that does not come from being alone in a room. It comes from being in a room full of people and still feeling like no one truly sees what is happening inside you. It comes from smiling at the right moments, saying the right things, showing up where you are supposed to show up, and yet carrying something underneath all of it that you have never been able to fully put into words. If you have known that kind of loneliness, then what is about to be spoken is going to reach a place in you that has needed reaching for a very long time, because the weight you have been carrying has a name. And more importantly, the one who placed the calling on your life has never once been unaware of what that weight feels like. You are not given a light burden. Chosen ones rarely are. The ones who are marked for greatness are almost always the ones who have had to carry things in silence that others could not see, navigate pressures that others could not understand, and endure seasons that others could not survive. And there are moments in the middle of those seasons when the silence of heaven can feel like absence, when the unanswered prayers begin to feel like ignored ones, when the delay begins to feel like denial, when the isolation begins to feel like abandonment. If you have been in that place, you are not alone and you are not forgotten. What you are is being prepared. There is a man in Scripture whose life tells this story with more clarity and more power than almost any other. His name was David, and before David was ever a king, before he ever stood before a giant with a smooth stone and an unshakable faith, before he ever wrote the words that have brought comfort to millions across thousands of years, he was a boy standing in a field that nobody thought mattered. He was the youngest of his brothers. He was the one left out when the prophet came. When Samuel arrived at the house of Jesse to anoint the next king of Israel, Jesse did not even call David in from the fields. He presented every other son first, as if David did not qualify for consideration, as if David was not worth including in the moment that would change everything. But God looked at Samuel in that moment and said something that should echo in your spirit today. He said, "Do not look at his appearance or at his physical stature, because I have refused him. For the Lord does not see as man sees, for man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 7. God was not looking at what the world was looking at. God was not evaluating David the way Jesse evaluated him, the way his brothers evaluated him, the way the circumstances of his life seemed to evaluate him. God was looking deeper. God was looking at the heart of a boy who worshiped in the wilderness, who fought lions and bears in the dark with no audience, who remained faithful in obscurity when faithfulness in obscurity costs everything and earns nothing visible in return. And that is exactly what God has been watching in you. He has not been looking at your title, your income, your reputation, or the version of yourself that you present when you need people to think you are doing well. He has been looking at your heart. He has been watching what you do when no one is watching. He has been listening to the prayers you pray in the middle of the night when the room is dark and the words barely come out. He has been present in every moment of quiet faithfulness that the world never applauded, every sacrifice that no one ever acknowledged, every time you chose to keep going when stopping would have been so much easier. The weight you carry is not evidence that God has turned away from you. It is evidence that God trusts you with something that requires strength. He does not place heavy callings on fragile foundations. He places them on people he has been building, quietly and carefully, through every experience that felt like too much. David was not built for the throne in the throne room. He was built for the throne in the wilderness, in the fields, in the long and silent years of waiting that looked from the outside like nothing was happening. But underneath the surface, something was being forged that no shortcut could have produced. A king was being prepared in secret, shaped by pressure, refined by silence, and made ready by the very seasons that seemed to be working against him. Your wilderness is not your end. Your wilderness is your workshop. Every moment of confusion, every season of feeling overlooked, every door that closed in your face, every relationship that walked away, every plan that fell apart before it could come together, none of it has been wasted. Not a single tear has fallen to the ground unnoticed by the God who numbered every one of them. Not a single night of struggle has passed without being recorded in heaven as a testament to the courage of a chosen one who refused to let go of a God who never let go of them. The loneliness you have felt is real. Do not let anyone minimize it or rush you past it, but let this truth sit beside it, not to erase it but to reframe it. The loneliness of a chosen one is almost always the loneliness of someone who has been set apart. Set apart not as punishment, but as protection. Set apart not because you are not enough, but because what is being built in you requires a kind of quiet that the crowd cannot provide. David did not become the man who could lead a nation by spending his early years surrounded by applause. He became that man by spending them in the fields, alone with God, learning to hear a voice that would guide him through battles no human strategy could have prepared him for. You are being prepared the same way. The things that have felt like they were working against you have actually been working for you, shaping the very character, the very depth, the very capacity for compassion and wisdom and resilience that your calling is going to require. And through all of it, God has been smiling. Not because the pain was easy, not because the waiting was comfortable, but because He can see what is coming, and what is coming for you is worth every moment of what you have been through. There is something that happens in a person when they begin to truly understand that they are being watched over, not monitored with suspicion, not observed with judgment, but covered with the kind of attention that only a father who is completely in love with his child could sustain. It changes the way you see your past. It changes the way you breathe through your present. And it begins to shift something in your chest about your future, because when you know that the eyes of heaven have never left you, the ground beneath your feet starts to feel a little more solid, even when everything around you is still shaking. Heaven has been watching you closely, not occasionally, not only in the moments when you were doing everything right, not only in the seasons when your faith was strong and your words were full of confidence and your steps were sure. Heaven has been watching you in the moments when you were not sure about anything at all, in the moments when you sat in silence and could not find a single word to pray, in the moments when you questioned everything you thought you believed, when the gap between what you were trusting God for and what you could actually see with your eyes felt so wide that you wondered if you had misunderstood something fundamental about how this whole thing was supposed to work. Heaven was watching in those moments too, and heaven was not disappointed. Heaven was moved. There is a difference between a God who tolerates your weakness and a God who is genuinely moved by your faith. The God who chose you is not sitting at a distance, arms folded, waiting for you to pull yourself together before he decides to engage with your life again. He is close. He has always been close. Closer than the breath in your lungs, closer than the heartbeat in your chest, closer than the thought forming in your mind before it ever becomes a word. And the watching he does is not passive. It is active. It is intentional. It is the watching of someone who is deeply invested in the outcome of your story, someone who has written your name into a plan that nothing in heaven or on earth has the authority to revoke. David understood this in a way that few people do, because David lived through enough darkness to have every reason to believe he had been abandoned, and yet he kept returning to the truth that God's eyes were on him. Think about the years David spent running from Saul. Think about what that season looked like from the outside. He had been anointed king, and yet he was hiding in caves. He had been chosen by God, and yet the most powerful man in the land was hunting him with an army. He had done nothing wrong, and yet he was living like a fugitive, moving from place to place, sleeping in the wilderness, surrounded by a ragged group of men who were themselves broken and desperate. If you had looked at David's life during that season without knowing the full story, you might have concluded that God had changed his mind. But David did not conclude that. Even in the caves, even in the running, even in the nights when danger was so close he could feel it pressing against the walls of wherever he was hiding, David wrote words that revealed a man who was still convinced that he was being watched over by a God who had not moved. He wrote, "Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me, your right hand will hold me fast." Psalm chapter 139, verses 7 through 10. That is not the language of a man who felt abandoned. That is the language of a man who had learned, through fire and silence and waiting, that God's presence is not conditional on comfort. And that is the revelation that heaven is pressing into your spirit right now. God's presence in your life is not conditional on how your circumstances look. It is not measured by how smoothly things are going or how clearly you can see the path ahead. His presence is a constant, an unchanging, uninterrupted, unbreakable reality that exists independently of your feelings about it, and completely independently of what your situation appears to be saying. He is here. He has always been here, and his eyes have never left you. Think about the moments in your life that felt like the furthest you had ever been from anything holy. Think about the seasons when you made choices that you are not proud of, when you wandered into places that did not align with who you knew yourself to be, when the distance between you and God felt like something you had created and were not sure how to close. Even in those moments, heaven was watching, not to record your failures for a future judgment, but to stay close enough to catch you when you turn back around. God does not abandon his chosen ones in their wandering. He follows them into it. He waits at the edges of it. And the moment they take one step back in his direction, he is already running toward them. You have been running toward him, maybe not perfectly, maybe not without stumbling, maybe with more questions than answers and more doubt than certainty on some days. But you have been moving in his direction, and that movement, however imperfect, has been seen and celebrated by a God whose eyes have never stopped following your story with love. The watching of heaven over your life is not something you have to earn or maintain. It is a gift that was given before you were born and will continue long after every earthly thing has passed away. And in this season, the watching is intensifying, not because you are in danger, but because you are getting close. close to something that heaven has been preparing for a long time, close to a door that is about to open, in a way that will make every closed door before it suddenly make perfect sense. And here is what makes that watching even more remarkable. It is not the watching of someone who is simply keeping track. It is the watching of someone who is genuinely delighted by what he sees. When God looks at you, he does not see a project that is behind schedule. He does not see a disappointment that he is managing. He does not see a version of what he originally intended that fell short somewhere along the way. He sees his chosen one, exactly as he always knew you would be in this moment, carried through exactly the seasons he always knew you would face, and arriving at exactly the threshold he always knew you would reach. And the smile that is on his face when he looks at you is not a polite smile. It is the smile of a father who is genuinely proud, genuinely moved, and genuinely certain that what he placed inside you is about to break through the surface of your life in a way that will make everything that came before it suddenly make sense. You have been asking questions in the silence that you were not sure anyone was hearing. Questions about timing, about purpose, about whether the distance between where you are and where you believed you were going was a sign that something had gone wrong or simply a sign that the road was longer than you expected. Heaven has heard every one of those questions, and the answer to all of them is the same. Nothing has gone wrong. The road is longer because what is at the end of it required a longer preparation, and the preparation is almost finished. The watching that heaven has been doing over your life has not been passive observation. It has been active participation in every single step of a journey that was mapped before you took the first one. So let this land fully before moving forward. You are not being watched with disappointment. You are not being monitored with impatience. You are being covered, guided, attended, and celebrated by a God whose eyes have never left you and whose smile has never dimmed. That is who is watching, and that is what the watching means. You are not alone in this. You have never been alone in this, and you never will be. Something has been building across everything spoken so far, and it would be wrong to move forward without letting it land completely. The loneliness you have carried, the seasons of waiting, the wilderness that shaped you the way it shaped David, none of that was random suffering. All of it was preparation for a version of you that operates at a level most people never reach. And what heaven is about to show you is that the preparation was not only spiritual, it was neurological, because the God who made you also made the mind inside you, and that mind was designed to function at a frequency that most of the world has never been taught to access. Researchers who study the brain have discovered something that chosen ones have always known in their spirits. There is a specific frequency that sets certain minds apart. Scientists call it gamma. It is the brainwave pattern associated with breakthrough thinking, with sudden clarity, with the kind of insight that feels like it came from somewhere outside yourself, because it arrived so fast and so completely that your conscious mind could not have manufactured it alone. Gamma is the frequency of eureka moments. It is the frequency of deep creative flow. It is the frequency that lights up the brains of the most innovative, the most inspired, the most spiritually attuned people on the planet. And here is what heaven wants you to understand today. That frequency was always meant to be yours. The chosen ones carry it. But the noise of the world, the pressure of survival, the weight of disappointment and stress and years of operating in fight or flight, all of it has suppressed that frequency in most people until it barely registers at all. But there is a way back to it, and a scientist spent more than 30 years of his life finding it. His name is Dr. James Rivers, a neuroscientist trained at MIT with decades of research connected to programs developed in collaboration with NASA. For over 30 years, Dr. Rivers dedicated himself to one question. Why do some minds operate at a level that others cannot seem to reach? And is there a way to close that gap? What he discovered through thousands of hours of research, brain imaging, and audio frequency Testing is that the brain has a natural capacity to synchronize with external sound frequencies. When the right frequencies are introduced through sound, the brain does not resist them. It follows them. This phenomenon is called brainwave entrainment, and it is one of the most well-documented findings in modern neuroscience. The brain, when exposed to precisely calculated audio tones, will begin to mirror those frequencies and shift into the corresponding mental state. Dr. Rivers identified two frequencies that are most critical for the kind of mental performance that changes lives. The first is theta, the brainwave state associated with deep creativity, accelerated learning, intuition, and the kind of meditative clarity that allows solutions to surface that the conscious analytical mind would never arrive at on its own. Children operate in theta naturally. It is why they learn so fast, absorb so much, and imagine without limitation. But as adults, the pressures of daily life push the brain out of theta and into higher stress frequencies almost permanently. The second is gamma, the frequency of peak cognitive performance, of the mind firing at its highest capacity, of the breakthroughs and the clarity and the inspired thinking that feels almost supernatural when it arrives. What Dr. Rivers created is a 7-minute audio track that guides the brain back into these frequencies through a precise combination of binaural beats and isochronic tones, calculated to create the exact conditions for theta and gamma activation. 7 minutes, not an hour of meditation, not years of training, not any pill, any device, or any complicated protocol. 7 minutes of listening and the brain begins to do what it was always designed to do. This is the tool that is going to be referenced again when practical steps are laid out in detail later in this message, because the connection between what you are spiritually and what you are neurologically is not a coincidence. God made both, and He intends for both to operate at full capacity. The stories coming from people who have used this tool are not small. A nurse named Patricia, who had been working double shifts for 2 years while raising her children alone, said that after 3 weeks of listening each morning before her shift, she felt a mental clarity she had not experienced since her 20s. She described it as the fog lifting, not just from her thinking but from her emotional life as well. She began to see solutions to problems at work that had been frustrating her team for months. She started sleeping more deeply than she had in years. And she said something that stopped everyone who heard it. She said, "I feel like I got my mind back, and with it, I got myself back." A retired schoolteacher named Gerald had spent the better part of a decade feeling like his best years were behind him. He had tried supplements, brain training apps, and every productivity system he could find. Within 30 days of using the 7-minute audio consistently, he reported that he had begun writing again, something he had abandoned 20 years earlier, and that ideas were coming to him faster than his hands could record them. He described his mind as feeling, for the first time in a long time, genuinely alive. Over 19,000 people have now used this tool. The return rate sits below 4%. Those are not the numbers of something that does not work. Those are the numbers of something that delivers on what it promises. Now, before the details of how to access this are shared, something needs to be said directly because it is important. $39 is not nothing, especially if you are in a season where every dollar has weight and every purchase requires a real decision. That feeling is valid. You are allowed to feel it and you are not being asked to dismiss it. But consider this. What is the cost of another year of operating below the capacity that God placed inside you? What is the cost of another season of mental fog, of creative blocks, of feeling like the version of yourself you know exists is just slightly out of reach? The investment being discussed here is not in a luxury. It is in the instrument through which your calling flows, which is your mind. The Genius Wave normally carries a price of $49, But today, through the link in the pinned comment and in the description below this video, it is available for $39. And it comes with a 90-day money-back guarantee. Not 30 days, 90 days. 3 full months to use it, experience it, and decide for yourself whether it has delivered what it promised. If it does not, every dollar comes back to you. No questions, no conditions. That guarantee exists because the people behind this product are not interested in taking money from someone whose life it does not improve. One more thing that must be said clearly, because it matters. There are imitations and unauthorized versions of this product circulating in places that are not affiliated with the original. Do not purchase from any source other than the link in the pinned comment or the description below this video. The only version that contains the precise frequency calibration developed through Dr. Rivers' research is the one available through that link. Anything else is not the same product, regardless of what it claims to be. And finally, this pricing is not permanent. The $39 access is available for a limited time and to a limited number of people. When that window closes, it closes. This is not a pressure tactic. It is simply the reality of how this offer is structured. If this message is reaching you today, that timing is not accidental. You have already established that you do not end up in places by coincidence. So if something in you is saying this is for me, trust that. The chosen one does not ignore the moments when heaven and practical opportunity arrive at the same door at the same time. Your mind is a divine instrument. It was made to operate at a frequency that the world has been trying to suppress in you for years. And the pathway back to that frequency is closer than you have been led to believe. What was just shared about your mind and the frequency it was built to carry is not separate from the spiritual journey being walked through in this message. It is part of the same truth, because the God who anointed David did not only anoint his spirit, he sharpened his mind, he steadied his hand, he calibrated every part of him for the assignment that was waiting on the other side of the wilderness. And what heaven is saying to you right now is that your preparation has always been whole. It has never been only about your soul while leaving your mind behind. God has always been interested in all of you, every layer, every faculty, every capacity that he placed inside you before you were born. So let what was spoken settle, and let this next truth build upon it, because what is coming is going to reach even deeper. You are being refined, not rejected. This is one of the most important distinctions a chosen one can learn to make, because the enemy of your calling has spent a great deal of energy trying to convince you that the fires you have walked through are evidence that God changed his mind about you, that the hard seasons are proof of divine disapproval, that the delays are punishment, that the losses are judgment, that the silence is abandonment. And if you have believed any version of that lie, even partially, even in the quiet corners of your heart where you have never said it out loud, then what is being spoken now is meant to dismantle it completely and permanently. Fire does not destroy what is chosen. Fire reveals it. Fire removes what does not belong. Fire burns away the layers of fear and performance and self-protection that accumulated over years of living in a world that taught you to hide your true self in order to survive. The refining process is not comfortable. No one who has ever walked through it would describe it as easy or pleasant or something they would have chosen for themselves if given the option to avoid it. But every single person who has come out on the other side of it will tell you the same thing. They are not the same person who went in, and they would not trade what they became for the comfort of never having gone through it. David knew this fire in ways that most people will never fully understand. After the anointing, after the giant, after the palace and the music and the favor of a king, came a season of persecution that by every outward measure looked like the story was going in the wrong direction. Saul, who had once loved David, became consumed by a jealousy that drove him to hunt David like an animal across the wilderness of Judah, David fled. He hid. He mourned. He cried out to God in language that was raw and unfiltered and sometimes desperate. He wrote in Psalm 22, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me, so far from my cries of anguish?" That is not the language of someone who had everything figured out. That is the language of a chosen one in the middle of a fire that felt like it had no end. And yet David did not let go. He did not walk away from the God who felt distant. He did not trade his calling for comfort or his faith for bitterness, even when bitterness would have been the most human and understandable response in the world. He kept crying out. He kept writing. He kept worshiping in the wilderness even when the wilderness was all he could see. And what God was doing in that fire was not abandoning David. He was removing everything from David that would have corrupted the king he was about to become. He was burning away the pride that proximity to power can produce. He was forging a compassion in David that only suffering can build. He was creating in David the capacity to lead broken people because David himself had been broken in the right places and healed by the right hands. Isaiah chapter 43 verse 2 says, "When you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned, the flames will not set you ablaze." Notice the language. It does not say if you pass through the waters, it says when. The fire is not an accident in your story. It is a planned passage, a necessary corridor between who you were and who you are being shaped to become. And the promise attached to it is not that you will avoid the fire. The promise is that the fire will not consume you, because the one who walks beside you in it is the same one who controls its temperature. Think about the specific fires you have walked through, the relationships that ended in ways that left you questioning your own worth, the opportunities that seemed perfectly aligned with your gifts and then collapsed before they could come to fruition. The physical seasons that pushed your body and your mind to limits you did not know you had. The financial pressures that stripped away every cushion and left you with nothing but the choice of whether to trust a God you could not see over circumstances you could not ignore. Every one of those fires was attended. Every one of them was watched over by a God who knew exactly how much heat was required and exactly when to bring you through to the other side. And here is what the other side looks like for a chosen one who has been through the fire. It looks like wisdom that cannot be bought or learned from a book. It looks like an empathy so deep that broken people feel safe around you before you have even spoken a word. It looks like a faith that is not fragile because it has already survived the things that were supposed to destroy it. It looks like a freedom from the opinions of people who once held great power over you. Because when you have stood in fire and discovered that God was there, the approval of the crowd loses the grip it once had on your decisions. The fire produces in you something that prosperity alone could never manufacture. It produces a chosen one who is genuinely unshakable. David moved from the cave to the throne not in spite of the wilderness, but because of it. The wilderness was not a detour from his destiny. It was the direct route. And the route you have been on, the one that has felt so long and so hard and so different from what you imagined it would look like by now, that route is also direct. It has been taking you somewhere specific. It has been building something in you that the throne room of your calling is going to require. And the God who has been with you through every mile of it is smiling because he can see the destination. And he knows that what is waiting there for you is worth everything you have been through to get there. You are not behind. You are not disqualified. You are not too broken or too late or too far from where you thought you would be. You are a chosen one in the middle of a refining process that is almost complete. And the God who started this work in you has never once considered stopping before it is finished. The path that has been walked through together in this message, from the moment you were named and chosen before the foundation of the world, through the weight you have carried in silence, through the watching eyes of heaven that never looked away, through the understanding of how your mind was built to operate, through the fires that have been refining rather than destroying you. All of it has been moving toward something, and what it has been moving toward is not just a destination. It is a way of living, a daily practice of alignment, a consistent returning to who you are and what you were made for, so that the calling on your life does not remain something you feel occasionally in moments of inspiration, but becomes something you walk in continuously, steadily, and with increasing confidence every single day. The instructions for how to do that have never been hidden from you. Heaven does not reveal a calling and then conceal the path to walking in it. God does not mark a chosen one and then leave them without the practical wisdom to steward what they have been given. Everything you need to move forward has already been placed within reach. And what this moment is about is bringing those things into focus, making them clear and actionable, so that when you leave this message, you are not just inspired but equipped. The first and most foundational practice is the one that David never abandoned, even in the darkest seasons of his life. It is the practice of returning to the presence of God before the day has a chance to define you. David wrote in Psalm 5, "In the morning, Lord, you hear my voice. In the morning I lay my requests before you and wait expectantly." Morning was not incidental to David. It was intentional. It was the moment he chose every single day to orient himself before he was pulled in every other direction by the demands of leadership, by the threats of enemies, by the weight of being responsible for an entire nation. He chose to hear from heaven first, and that choice, made consistently over a lifetime, was the foundation of everything else he built. For you, this practice does not need to look like hours of structured devotion, though if that is something you are drawn to, pursue it fully. It can be as simple as 5 minutes of stillness before you reach for your phone. 5 minutes of saying to God, "I am yours today, lead me, speak to me, show me what you see." 5 minutes of opening your hands rather than clenching them. That kind of morning practice, done consistently, creates a foundation beneath your day that holds when everything else shifts. It trains your spirit to lead your mind rather than your circumstances leading both. The second practice is the one that connects your spiritual identity to the neurological reality that was discussed earlier in this message. Because David did not only worship with his spirit, he was also a man of extraordinary mental sharpness, a military strategist, a poet, a musician, a leader who could read situations with a clarity that consistently outpaced those around him. His mind was not separate from his anointing. It was part of it, and the same is true for you. The sharpness of your mind, the clarity of your thinking, the creative capacity that God placed in you, these are not secular additions to a spiritual life. They are tools of the calling. This is why the 7-minute practice connected to the Genius Wave audio is worth returning to here, not as a product recommendation disconnected from everything else being spoken, but as a practical tool that aligns with a deeper truth. When you give your mind 7 minutes each day to reset into the frequencies of theta and gamma, you are not just doing a brain exercise. You are honoring the instrument through which your calling flows. You are maintaining the mind that God gave you in the condition that allows it to operate the way He designed it to operate. Creativity, clarity, intuition, deep focus, these are not luxuries. They are the cognitive expressions of a chosen one walking in full capacity. And 7 minutes a day is a small and completely manageable investment in that capacity. Pair that 7-minute audio practice with your morning time in God's presence, and what you create is a daily ritual of alignment that addresses you at every level. Spirit, mind, and intention, all pointed in the same direction before the world has had a chance to pull any of them off course. That is not a complicated protocol. It is a simple, sustainable, repeatable act of stewardship over the life you have been given. The third practice is one that chosen ones often resist because it feels too small to matter. It is the practice of gratitude spoken out loud. not gratitude performed for an audience, not a list recited because someone told you it is good for your mental health, though it is, but genuine, specific, spoken acknowledgement of what God has already done, because the chosen one who cannot see what God has already done will struggle to trust what God is about to do. Gratitude is not a feeling that arrives on its own. It is a discipline that creates a feeling. It is a daily decision to look at your life and name the evidence of God's faithfulness before you name the evidence of what is still incomplete. David practiced this relentlessly. His psalms are filled with it. Even in the psalms that begin in anguish, almost every one of them turns. There is a moment where the language shifts from crying out in pain to declaring what God has done and what God will do. That turn was not accidental. It was practiced. It was chosen. And it is available to you in the same way. Now this message has been a long one, and you have stayed with it, which means something in you recognized that what was being spoken was worth the time it took to receive it. If this has moved something in you, if it has shifted something in your thinking or your spirit or your understanding of who you are and what you are walking toward, then the most natural thing you can do right now is share it with someone who needs to hear it. Not because a number needs to go up on a screen, but because there is someone in your life right now who is sitting in a cave, who is in the middle of a fire, who is carrying a weight they cannot name, who needs someone to send them the message that they are chosen, that they are being refined, not rejected, and that God smiles every time He looks at them. Share this video with that person. It does not need a long message attached to it. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do for someone is simply place something true in front of them and trust that heaven will do the rest. Like this video if it has spoken to you, because your engagement helps this message reach more chosen ones who are waiting for exactly these words. Subscribe to this channel if you have not already, because what is being built here is a community of people who refuse to live below the calling placed on their lives. And every new message released is designed to take you deeper into the truth of who you are. And if this ministry has blessed you, if these words have been a source of strength or clarity or comfort in a season when you needed all three, there is a link in the description and in the pinned comment where you can sow into what is being built here. Every contribution, regardless of size, helps this message reach further, speak louder, and find more chosen ones who are ready to receive it. You are not just a receiver of this ministry. You are a part of it. And what you sow into it comes back to you in ways that heaven alone knows how to measure. You are equipped. You are aligned. You are walking in the right direction. And the God who chose you is smiling at every single step. There is a moment in the life of every chosen one when the opposition reaches its peak. When everything that has been working against you seems to gather itself into one concentrated force and push against the door of your destiny with everything it has. And if you are in that moment right now, or if you have recently come through it, or if you sense it gathering on the horizon of your life, then what needs to be established clearly and permanently in your spirit before you take another step is this: what God starts, no one can stop. Not a person, not a system, not a circumstance, not a season, not the accumulation of every obstacle that has ever been placed in your path combined. When heaven has marked something for completion, the only question is never whether it will happen. The only question is whether you will be standing in faith when it does. This is not a motivational statement dressed in spiritual language. This is a declaration rooted in the unchanging character of a God who has never once begun something He did not finish. Think about the entire arc of creation. Think about the covenants He made with Abraham, with Moses, with David, and consider how many times along the way it looked from the outside as though the plan had been derailed. Consider how many times the people involved in those covenants faced circumstances so severe, so contrary to what had been promised, that any reasonable observer would have concluded that the promise had expired. And yet every single time, without exception, What God had spoken came to pass, not because the path was smooth, not because the opposition was weak, but because the one who made the promise has never lacked the power or the intention to keep it. David understood this truth at a level that was forged through experience rather than inherited through theory. By the time David was finally crowned king over all of Israel, he had lived through years of running, years of hiding, years of watching people he trusted betray him, years of grief and loss, and the kind of warfare that leaves marks on a person that never fully disappear. He had lost his closest friend. He had been falsely accused. He had led men into battles where the cost of leadership was measured in grief rather than glory. And through all of it, the promise that had been spoken over him when he was a boy standing in a field remained alive. Not because David was perfect. He was not. Not because David never failed. He did, profoundly and with consequences that followed him. But because the God who made the promise was more committed to keeping it than David's failures were capable of breaking it. That is the God who is keeping the promise he made over your life. He is not keeping it because you have earned it. He is not maintaining his commitment to your destiny because your track record has been flawless. He is keeping it because he is faithful, because his word does not return to him empty, because the calling he placed on your life before you were born is irrevocable, meaning it cannot be taken back. It cannot be canceled. It cannot be transferred to someone else because you had a season where you stumbled. Romans chapter 11 verse 29 says, "For the gifts and the calling of God are irrevocable." That word irrevocable is doing enormous work in your life right now. It means the enemy cannot revoke it. Disappointment cannot revoke it. Your own worst moments cannot revoke it. Time cannot revoke it. Delay cannot revoke it. The calling is still active. The promise is still standing. And the God who made it is still working. Think about the forces that have tried to stop you. Think about the voices that told you it was too late, that you had missed your window, that someone like you could not possibly be the one that heaven had marked for something significant. Think about the relationships that were used as instruments of discouragement, the words spoken over you in moments of cruelty or carelessness that tried to define you by your worst season rather than by your divine origin. Think about the internal voices, the ones that did not come from outside but from somewhere inside, the voices of shame and self-doubt, and the quiet but persistent suggestion that maybe the calling was for someone else, and you had simply misunderstood. Every one of those forces has already lost, not will lose, has already lost, because the moment God placed his hand on your life, the outcome of the war was settled. The battles along the way are real, the wounds are real, the weariness is real, but the outcome is not in question. You are going to walk into what God promised you. Not because you are strong enough on your own, but because the one who promised is strong enough for both of you. And he has never once needed your enemies to cooperate in order to fulfill his word. David faced a man named Goliath who was by every measurable standard an impossible opponent. The Israelite army had looked at Goliath and concluded that he could not be defeated. They had done the calculation, measured the gap between what they had and what he had, and arrived at an answer of impossibility. But David walked onto that battlefield with a different equation. He was not measuring his own strength against Goliath's. He was measuring Goliath's strength against God's. And when you run that calculation, the answer is never impossibility. The answer is always the same. God wins. And because God wins, the ones he has chosen win with him. The giants in your life are real. Do not let anyone tell you they are not. The financial pressure is real. The health challenge is real. The relational wound is real. The career obstacle is real. The grief that sits in your chest some mornings before you even fully wake up is real. None of it is being minimized here. But every single one of those giants is standing on ground that does not belong to it. Every one of them is occupying territory that heaven has already assigned to you. And the God who sent a shepherd boy to face down a warrior is the same God who is sending you, exactly as you are, into the situation that looks impossible, because He already knows how it ends. What no force on earth or in the unseen realm has been able to accomplish is the silencing of the call on your life. They have tried delay. They have tried discouragement. They have tried distraction and destruction and the slow erosion of hope that comes from waiting longer than seems reasonable for something that was promised. And yet the call is still there. You can still feel it. You would not be here receiving this message if the call had gone quiet. The fact that something in you is still reaching, still believing, still leaning toward the promise even when the evidence for it feels thin, that reaching is the sound of a chosen one who cannot be stopped, because the one who chose them refuses to let them be. What God starts, He finishes. What He promises, He delivers. What He marks, He protects. And what He has spoken over your life has not lost a single syllable of its power from the day it was first declared over you to this very moment. The opposition has done its worst, and you are still here. That is not coincidence. That is the faithfulness of God made visible in the story of a chosen one who refused to let go, and a God who never once considered letting go of them. Something is shifting, not tomorrow, not when the circumstances finally line up the way you have been waiting for them to, not when the people around you finally see what heaven has always seen in you. Right now, in this moment, as these words are landing in your spirit, something is moving in the unseen realm on your behalf that your natural eyes cannot yet detect, but that your spirit, if you are still and honest enough to listen, can absolutely feel. There is a stirring happening in you. There has been a stirring throughout this entire message, and if you have stayed with every word of it, then you already know that what you are feeling in your chest right now is not anxiety, even if it feels unfamiliar enough to be mistaken for it. What you are feeling is activation, the sound of a destiny that has been dormant beginning to wake up, the frequency of a chosen one whose time has come beginning to rise. Heaven does not make announcements without intention. When God moves in the unseen realm on behalf of a chosen one, it is never arbitrary, never decorative, never simply for the feeling of a moment that passes and leaves nothing behind. Every movement of heaven in a person's life is purposeful, directional, and connected to something that is about to become visible. The stirring you feel right now is connected to a door. Not a metaphorical door that exists somewhere vaguely in the future. A real and specific door, one that heaven has been preparing for you through every season of refinement, every season of waiting, every season of being shaped in the wilderness, the way David was shaped before the throne room was ever within reach. David knew what it felt like to sense a shift before it arrived. He wrote about it in language that was not detached or theoretical but deeply personal and experiential. He had lived long enough in the tension between promise and fulfillment to recognize the feeling of heaven moving on his behalf, and he had learned to respond to that feeling not with passive waiting but with active expectation. There is a difference between those two things that chosen ones must understand. Passive waiting says, "I will believe it when I see it." Active expectation says, "I will position myself as though it is already on its way, because the God who promised it has never missed a delivery." The shift inside you is not the destination. It is the signal that the destination is closer than it has ever been. And what you do with that signal matters enormously, because there are chosen ones who feel the stirring of heaven in their lives and respond to it with excitement in the moment, and then allow the demands of ordinary life to slowly muffle that signal until it fades back into the background noise of the everyday. And there are chosen ones who feel that stirring and decide in the moment of feeling it to make a choice that aligns their actions with what heaven is doing, to take one step, however small, in the direction of the calling, to say yes to the activation with something more than a feeling. Think about the moment David decided to step onto the battlefield. Every voice around him said no. His oldest brother spoke to him with contempt. The king initially dismissed him. The soldier standing next to him had been paralyzed by the same giant for 40 days and had nothing to offer but a uniform and a weapon that did not fit. And David, in the middle of all of that made a decision that changed the entire trajectory of not just his life but the life of a nation. He stepped forward, not because the circumstances invited him to, not because the opposition had cleared, not because everyone around him had finally caught up to what he could already see. He stepped forward because the stirring in his spirit was louder than every voice that was telling him to stay back. The stirring in your spirit right now is louder than the voices that have been telling you to stay back. It is louder than the voice of past failure. It is louder than the voice of other people's doubt. It is louder than the voice of a timeline that seems to be running later than you planned. And the question that heaven is placing before you in this moment is not a complicated one. It is simply this: will you step forward? Will you take the next step, whatever that step looks like in your specific life, in your specific season, with your specific set of resources and limitations and unanswered questions? Will you move in the direction of what God has been preparing you for, trusting that the one who stirred you is the same one who will sustain you? Zechariah chapter 4 verse 10 says, "Do not despise these small beginnings, for the Lord rejoices to see the work begin." Small beginnings, not small endings, not small ceilings. Small beginnings, which by their very nature imply that what starts small does not stay small when heaven is behind it. David started with a sling and 5 smooth stones. He ended with a throne and a legacy that would carry the lineage of the Messiah. Your beginning, wherever it starts, whatever it looks like, is not the measure of where you are going. It is simply the first step of a journey that heaven has already mapped to a destination that will take your breath away when you finally arrive. Right now, in this moment, as the shift continues to move through your spirit, let heaven hear your voice. Type the words "claim it now" in the comments below, not as a performance, not because it is expected, but as a declaration spoken from the deepest part of you, the part that has always known the promise was real even when everything around you was arguing otherwise. Claim it now. Let those 3 words be the sound of a chosen one planting a flag in the ground of their destiny and saying to every force that has tried to delay them, "This belongs to me, and the God who gave it to me has never once let go of his word." Because when you declare what heaven has already decided, you are not wishing, you are agreeing. And agreement with heaven is the most powerful position a chosen one can stand in. The shift is real, the activation is happening, and the God who is smiling at you right now is not smiling because you finally got everything right. He is smiling because he can see what is on the other side of the door that is opening, and he knows that what is waiting there for you is more than you have allowed yourself to imagine. Step forward, chosen one. The ground beneath your feet is already holy, and the one who walks beside you has never lost a battle. There is a kind of person the world does not quite know what to do with. They are not loud in the way that demands attention, and yet when they walk into a room something shifts. They are not aggressive in the way that forces outcomes, and yet things seem to move around them in ways that cannot always be explained by strategy or effort alone. They carry something that does not have a simple name in the language of the ordinary world, something that makes people feel simultaneously challenged and comforted, simultaneously confronted with what they could be, and reassured that who they already are is enough. You are that kind of person. You are made to shine in the dark, and the darkness of the world you are living in right now is not a reason to hide what you carry. It is the very reason your light is needed more urgently than it has ever been before. The world does not need more people who have perfected the art of blending in. It does not need more voices that only speak when the room is already safe, more hands that only reach when the cost of reaching is low, more hearts that only open when the risk of being seen is minimal. The world is full of that kind of careful, managed, self-protective living, and it is not producing the transformation that the moment we are all living in requires. What this moment requires is chosen ones who are fully awake, fully alive in their calling, fully present in the light that God placed inside them before they ever drew their first breath. And that chosen one is you. Not eventually, not after you have resolved every question you are still carrying, not after the circumstances have finally arranged themselves into something that feels safe, enough to step into fully. Now, as you are, where you are, with everything you have and everything you are still becoming. David understood what it meant to carry light into dark places. His life was not a story of someone who waited until everything was perfect before he showed up fully. He showed up fully in the field when no one was watching, which is why he was ready when the whole nation was watching. He showed up fully in the cave, writing words of worship in the middle of a season that had every reason to produce only bitterness. He showed up fully on the battlefield when every person around him had decided that the darkness of that particular giant was too thick to challenge. And because he showed up fully in the dark places, the light he carried became visible in a way that changed the course of an entire nation and echoed through thousands of years of human history, all the way into this very moment. Your light is not less significant because your stage feels smaller than David's. Heaven does not measure significance the way the world measures it. A mother who raises her children with the love and the wisdom and the intentionality of a chosen one is shining a light that will outlast her by generations. A teacher who sees the potential in a student that everyone else has written off and refuses to stop believing. In that student is carrying a light that could alter the entire trajectory of a human life. A person who chooses kindness in a moment when cruelty would have been easier, who chooses honesty when deception would have been more convenient, who chooses to stay when leaving would have been more comfortable. That person is a light in the dark that the darkness cannot comprehend and cannot overcome. John chapter 1 verse 5 says, "The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Has not overcome it. Not will not. Not might not. Has not." That is a statement about the permanent, undefeated, undiminished nature of the light that lives in every chosen one who carries the presence of God. The darkness has never once successfully overcome the light. It has surrounded it. It has pressed against it. It has done everything in its considerable power to extinguish it, but it has not overcome it. And the light that lives in you, the light that has been burning through every dark season you have survived, the light that has refused to go out even when you yourself were not sure you had the strength to keep it burning, that light has not been overcome either. It is still there. It is still burning, and it is about to burn brighter than it ever has before. Think about the specific darkness that surrounds you right now, not in a way that gives it more power than it deserves, but in a way that helps you see why your light matters so specifically in this moment. Think about the relationships in your life where someone is waiting for the courage that only you can model for them. Think about the spaces you occupy where the atmosphere changes when you are fully present and fully yourself. Think about the conversations that need to happen, the words that need to be spoken, the stands that need to be taken, that will not happen and will not be spoken and will not be taken unless you decide to be the one who does it. You are not just a recipient of light. You are a carrier of it, and carriers do not hide what they carry. They move toward the darkness with it because that is the only place it makes a visible difference. There is something that happens in the spirit realm when a chosen one steps fully into their light. It is not just a personal transformation, though it is absolutely that. It is a territorial shift. When you begin to walk fully in the calling that God placed on your life, when you stop apologizing for the light you carry and start deploying it with intention and with confidence, the atmosphere around you begins to change. People in your sphere begin to encounter something through you that they cannot find anywhere else. Doors begin to open that have no natural explanation. Opportunities surface that were not visible from where you were standing before you stepped into the fullness of what you were made for. Connections are made that heaven arranged long before you could have planned them. This is not the prosperity gospel. This is the natural consequence of a chosen one aligned with their purpose. Things move when the right person shows up in the right spirit at the right time. And you are the right person. You have always been the right person. The question has never been whether God made a mistake in choosing you. He has never made that kind of mistake. The question has only ever been whether you would believe it enough to live like it. Whether you would carry the light with the confidence of someone who knows where it comes from and therefore knows that it cannot be exhausted, cannot be stolen, and cannot be permanently dimmed by anything the darkness throws against it. You were made for this moment, not a moment like this one. This exact moment, with its specific darkness and its specific needs and its specific people who are waiting for a specific light that only you carry in the specific way that you carry it. Heaven did not make a generic chosen one and assign them to a generic moment. Heaven made you with your exact history and your exact wounds and your exact gifts and your exact voice, and placed you in this exact season because the combination of who you are and what this moment needs is not accidental. It is architectural. It is the design of a God who builds with precision and who does not waste a single element of what he creates. Shine, chosen one, not because the world deserves it, though it needs it desperately. Shine because it is who you are. Shine because the God who placed that light inside you is smiling every single time it breaks through the surface of your life and reaches someone who had almost given up on ever seeing light again. Shine because the darkness has already lost, and the light you carry is the proof. There is no way to close a message like this one without acknowledging what has happened in the space between the first word spoken and this final one. Something real has taken place. Not just in the realm of information transferred or inspiration momentarily felt, but in the deeper place where truth lands when it finds the soil it was always meant for. You have been sitting with a message that heaven designed, specifically for you, and if you have felt something moving in your chest throughout these words, if there have been moments where something shifted that you cannot fully explain, that movement is not the end of something. It is the beginning. It is the first breath of a season that is going to look different from every season that came before it, because you are different now than you were when this message began. Something has been deposited in you, something has been confirmed in you, and something has been activated in you that the darkness does not have the authority to deactivate. You have walked through a lot in this message. You have been reminded that you were chosen before you could choose, that the weight you carry is not evidence of abandonment but of anointing, that heaven has never stopped watching you with love and with intention. You have been shown that your mind is a divine instrument designed to operate at a frequency that most of the world never reaches, and that the tools to access that frequency are within your reach. You have been walked through the fires of refinement and reminded that fire does not destroy what is chosen, it reveals it. You have been told that what God starts no one can stop, that the shift inside you is real and the activation is already happening, and that you were made to shine in the dark with a light that the darkness has never once successfully overcome. David, whose story has been woven through this entire message, did not finish his life in the cave. He did not finish it running from Saul. He did not finish it in the wilderness or on the battlefield or in any of the hard places that shaped him. He finished it having built something that outlasted him by millennia. He finished it having written words that still reach into the darkest nights of the darkest lives and bring something through that no human author alone could manufacture. He finished it as a man who, despite his failures and his grief and his very human imperfections, was called by God a man after his own heart. Not a perfect man, not a man without scars, but a man whose heart kept returning to the one who had chosen him, and who never stopped believing, even in the hardest seasons, that the God who smiled at him had not stopped smiling. That is the trajectory of your life too. Not perfection, not a path without scars, but a path that keeps returning to the one who chose you, a heart that keeps reaching toward the God whose smile has never left your face, a life that finishes having built something that outlasts you and reaches people you will never meet in places you will never go, because the light you carried was real and the calling you walked in was genuine, and the God who placed it all inside you was faithful to every word he ever spoke over you. Before this message closes, there is something that needs to happen, not as a ritual, not as a religious formality, but as a genuine moment of connection between you and the God who has been speaking to you through every word of what has been shared today. A prayer, spoken simply and from the heart, because there are things that need to be said between a chosen one and the God who chose them that no message, however long or however carefully crafted, can say on their behalf. So if you are willing, wherever you are right now, let these words be yours. Father, I receive what you have spoken over my life today. I receive the truth that I was chosen before I could choose, that my name was written in your book before my story began on this earth. I receive the truth that the weight I have carried is not punishment but preparation, and that every fire I have walked through has been attended by your presence and directed by your purpose. I receive the truth that my mind is a divine instrument, that you made every part of me with intention, and that nothing in me is an accident or an afterthought. I receive the truth that what you started in me you will finish, that the promise over my life is irrevocable, and that no force in heaven or on earth has the authority to cancel what you have declared. I receive the truth that I was made to shine in the dark, and I choose today to stop apologizing for the light you placed inside me and to start carrying it with the confidence of someone who knows where it came from. Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for not letting go. Thank you for smiling at me every time you look at me, even in the seasons when I could not feel it. I trust you with what is ahead. I step forward into it. Amen. If that prayer landed somewhere real in you, if something in your spirit said yes to those words, then you are not leaving this message the same way you arrived. You are leaving it as a chosen one who has been reminded of who they are, equipped with what they need, and activated for what is coming. And what is coming for you is worth every moment of what you have been through to get there. If this message has been a source of strength, a moment of clarity, or a turning point in a season where turning points were desperately needed, then the most natural thing you can do right now is share it with someone who needs to hear it. Not because a number needs to climb on a screen, but because somewhere in your life there is a person sitting in their own cave, carrying their own weight, wondering if heaven has forgotten their name, and the most powerful thing you can do for them is place this message in front of them and trust that the same God who spoke to you through it will speak to them through it too. Share it freely. Let it travel as far as heaven wants it to go. Like this video if these words have moved something in you. Subscribe to this channel if you have not already, because this is a community of chosen ones who refuse to live below the calling placed on their lives. And every message released here is designed to take you deeper into the truth of who you are and higher into the fullness of what you were made for. And if this ministry has been a blessing to you, if these words have walked with you through seasons when you needed someone walking with you, there is a link in the description and in the pinned comment where you can sow into what is being built here. Every seed sown into this ground comes back to you multiplied, because that is the nature of kingdom generosity, and that is the promise attached to every chosen one who gives from a place of faith rather than fear. You are seen, you are known, you are loved with a love that has no beginning and no end. You are chosen not because you earned it, but because before the world had any opinion about you at all, God looked at you and made a decision that has never been reversed. And every single time he looks at you today, that decision is confirmed again with a smile that has your name on it. Go forward, chosen one. The world is waiting for the light that only you carry, and the God who chose you is already there ahead of you, making the way.